and I also serve as the co-chair of the Civic Engagement Committee for the National Association of University Women, Flushing North Shore Branch, alongside with my co-chair, Fanya Jean. This event is a collaboration between both organizations created to provide our community with the knowledge and tools to build a stronger financial future. To begin, please join me in welcoming the leadership of our organizations. First, we'll hear from Madam Basilisk Adrienne Martian, the Eta Psi Sigma alumni chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. As Erica shared, my name is Adrienne Martian. I'm the president or basilisk of the Beta Psi Sigma chapter. We serve on Long Island. We serve both Nassau and Suffolk County. We have been here for 18 years. We are celebrating 18 years this year, so we're really excited about that. Financial literacy is something that's near and dear to my heart as an accountant or CPA. I am currently even doing my own spring cleaning of my finances and just really doing a reassessment. So I'm really excited to have this event and just hear from our presenters this evening and just look for tools and tips and different things that we should be looking at in order to just make sure that we are as financially well as possible. And we definitely invite Q&A and questions, and at the end we'll also have an opportunity for you to provide some feedback as well so that we can continue this collaboration and this series to make sure that we are supporting our communities when it comes to financial literacy. So thank you. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Erica.
Thank you, Madam Basilisk. We will now hear from Madam President Dion Jean Louis.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. As Erica mentioned, my name is Dion Jean-Louis, and I serve as the branch president for the Flushing North Shore branch of the National Association of University Women Incorporated. Again, just like Adrienne mentioned, financial literacy is something that we strive and trying to promote within our community. I think it's a conversation that we all need to have. I think that our community is one that doesn't have it as often as we should. So we are very excited to be here tonight to bring this awareness to you and to hopefully have you be able to take some notes and take this back to your family and your friends. And like Adrienne mentioned, we want to have some questions and some answers so that way we can have a conversation about our financial abilities and be able to bring this back to the community. So we have some great presenters here ready to give you all of the knowledge that they have. So sit back and relax, enjoy the workshop, and I hope you get everything you need from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. So, and thank you both for your leadership and making this collaboration happen today. So now we're going to begin. I'm like to introduce Mr. Tyree Hardy from Hard Ink Wealth. I'm going to turn it over to. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, it's okay.
Hard Wealth Incorporated, excuse me.
Yep. Hey, how's everybody doing? Everybody good? Everybody good? That's good. I know a lot of people, don't have their cameras on. If you don't have your cameras on, of course, you could write in the chat room. I'm going to be asking a couple questions. I would like for you guys to, of course, answer them and be engaged. Even if you don't have your cameras on, I would ask if you could turn your cameras on. Everything is accepted, bonnets, do-rags, if you have on your scarf, whatever. Just a quick fill, where's everybody from in here? Are we all from the 5 boroughs? I know we said Long Island, Nassau, Suffolk County. I'm born and raised Queens, so I don't. Okay, we got another Queens. Yes, Queens. Who else we got? Queens, yes. Nassau, but from Queens. Okay. That Queens gang. You see, I'm liking it. I'm liking it. All right. So the first question I want to ask you guys is, if growing up, when you asked your parents for money, what was the first response that they gave you when you asked them for money? Right? No, right? Okay, Brooklyn's people still shouting out there for what? Just in general, you ask your parents for money. Okay, why? Don't got it. Right. Money doesn't go on trees. You don't have a job. Do you have any PlayStation money? Right. These are all of the things you're hearing. Now, if you had Queens, okay, Queens is really heavy in here. I'm liking that. So, second question I want to ask you guys is, what would you guys do if you had $1 million cash, Harlem? What would you guys do if you had $1 million cash right now? What are you using to spend on that money? Okay, you're gonna spend it. All right, invest it and live off the earnings. Pay off some debt. All right, flip it. All right, all right, all right. These are all good answers. Invest, right? Invest for my son's future. Right, right, right. So how money is crazy because you have people that we all make money, right? But now people spend it and now people don't know how to put it away, right? Because I mean, does anybody in here know their great grandparents' names? I'm pretty sure y'all don't, right? But if they left you a fortune, I'm pretty sure you would remember their name, right? Because if you go into even, famous hotels and stuff like that, they have their great grandparents on the wall, a portrait of them because they remember that person based off of the things that they left behind, right? So I wanted to be able to would I be able to use the whiteboard? Let me see something really fast. All right, wonderful. New whiteboard. All right, let's load this up really quick. All right, so can y'all tell me what y'all see here? Right? What do y'all see here? A family, right? A family, right? Exactly, right? So let me ask you guys a question. In an event where let's just say dad is making 3,500, mom is making 3,500, and obviously the kids aren't making anything, right? Right? That's why you get them to go get the remote for you and go get the groceries, right? Now, if in that situation, let's just say they have a mortgage, they have car payments, they have all of these things that's going on, right? What is it that all right, let me just start off by saying this. Most people immigrated here to America for what? The what? The American dream, right? But are people necessarily getting that? Like, are people coming here when people come over here to come to America? Is it because they want to work until the day they die and they're trying to live to pay bills? No, not exactly, not at all, right? So let's just say dad is making 3,500, right? And mom is making $3,500 a month, right? Now, how do you get to this eraser here? So let's just say they're both making 3,500 a month, right? And with bills, everything said, they have a total of $7,000 worth of bills, right? Now, if they have $7,000 worth of bills and they're both bringing in 7,000 combined, what do you think that household is like? Do you think they're getting into a lot of arguments? Do you think there's a lot of fighting going on? Because you know what they say, right? No money, no what? Honey, right? So it's probably a lot of arguing going on. Now, what is something that people should have? Let's say, I'm just trying to get to this eraser. Let's just, yeah. So let's just say, wait, okay. Let's just say something happens to mom, right? And it's just dad, right? Let's say dad and hold on. Let's just say dad and it's only the daughter left, right? Mom is gone, right? The bills now are still 7,000, but the income, is it the same or is it different? If something was to happen to mom, it's going to be the same, right? In most households, a married couple, when a married person in a relationship passes away, the surviving person usually loses that house within the first year. Now, in order to be able to supplement a loss, what is something that we should all know in order to cover for, what a person has left behind? Anybody know the answer to that? Yeah, no? All right. Well, the answer to that is okay, life insurance. Okay. Okay, okay. So you guys, all right, have life. All right, so you guys know. Now, does anybody in here know the two types of life insurance? There's two types. Does anybody know it? Five, four, whole and term. Okay. Okay, know your stuff. Know your stuff, right? So we have whole and term, right? Whole and term life insurance. Now, how does whole work, right? The bank or whoever's selling you the policy is going to say, listen, for $100 a month, right? We're going to give you $100,000, right? Something happens to you, we're going to give your family $100,000, and there's going to be a savings or a cash value, and it's going to grow to $20,000 after you pay into it for the next 20 years, right? Sound good? Everybody sound good? Now, if they say that this savings is going to grow to 20,000 after 20 years and you're paying $100 a month, after 2 years you've now paid $2,400. How much of that $2,400 do you expect to be in your cash value or in your savings? Anybody want to take a guess? You paid 2,400. They say this is also going to be a partial savings that you're going to be able to pull from whenever you like. How much money do you think is in there after you paid into it for 2 years? $0. Okay. That's that's Adrian. She's an accountant. She knows. So yes, that's exactly correct. The first 2 to 5 years, no money accrues into your cash value savings in your whole life policy. Now, if I was a banker and I opened up a savings account for you and I said, listen, for the next 2 to 5 years, don't even bother asking for your money because it's not going to be there. Would you want to open up that account with me? I'm pretty sure you probably wouldn't, right? Now, the second thing about whole life is that when you want to take the money out the cash value, it is considered a loan. So how is it that you're loaning or you're borrowing against your own money? Is it even your own money if you have to borrow against it? Probably not, right? The last and final thing is in whole life, the insurance companies, they keep the cash value that is in your whole life policy. Your family only gets the $100,000 worth of death benefit that they promise, but the $20,000 is going to go right back to the insurance company. Now, it's weird because a lot of people don't have life insurance, right? So of the people that do have life insurance, I always congratulate them because that's always the responsible thing to do. They're looking after their family in case an unfortunate event was to happen, etc. But a lot of those people still who even have life insurance are still underinsured by a lot of money, roughly $300,000. Because let's face it, is $100,000 gonna be able to cover a mortgage and all of the bills that were left behind if a contributing person in a family was bringing in money? How long is $100,000 gonna last a family living in New York? What, 6 months, maybe a year, right? So now the second thing is what else is out there, right? So we talked about what else is out there, right? If you go over to a term, you can get 400,000, right? 400,000, $400,000 and only spend $50 a month, right? So you go from $100 a month to now $50 a month. So now the money that you save, right? You want to invest that money into something called, that's not mother, the bad word. That stands for mutual funds, right? You want to invest your money into something called mutual funds, right? Now, after 20 years, you're looking at your money turning in or compounding into $40,000. Now, the slogan that my company actually uses is to buy term and invest the difference. Why? Because you're going from getting $100,000 worth of coverage to now $400,000 worth of coverage. And then we invest that difference of the money that you save going from the whole to the term into something called mutual funds. And right? Allen Iverson. Albert Einstein said that the most powerful force in the universe is compounding interest, right? Because we all know about credit cards, right? You get a credit card, you spend it, you owe a whole bunch of interest on it. Let's face it, the banks are charging you more money to borrow their money as opposed to when you put that same money into a savings account. Anybody here has an account with any bank? Chase, Wells. Well, name some banks that you guys have, right? You can put it in the chat if you're afraid to unmute yourself. It's fine, right? let's really face it. Are the banks 4-leaf? I have 4-leaf. That's interesting. Are the banks making you rich? No, right? Right? The banks aren't making you rich. The main purpose of the bank is to invest your money, right? While also borrowing or loaning your money out, right? So with that said, they're in the best interest of course, their own pockets, right? So anybody have any questions about that so far? I'm about to go into the next topic really fast. Any questions? All right. So let's talk about I want to talk about really quick a W2 versus a 10W2 versus a 1099. Anybody know the difference between a W2 versus a 1099? Yes, no? All right, so a W2 is what? Okay, yes, we got a yes. All right, so let's say a W2, 100,000, right? W2, 100,000, 1099, 100,000, right? 1099 is self-employed. W2, yes, is employee tax. Now, if you make $100,000 salary, is it $100,000? No, it's not. It's something called taxes, right? Uncle Sam, right? Uncle Sam is going to take a chunk of that out, right? So the federal tax rate is 24%, and then New York state tax rate is another 6%. So we're looking at about having $70,000, right? And then, of course, you got Medicare, Medicaid, all of that extra stuff, right? So it's really about 65,000, right? So that makes more when I always told myself I want to make 6 figures, and I was thinking about, of course, getting a salary, and I saw this, I was just like, that's interesting. People who say they're making 100,000 aren't necessarily making that. Now, if we look at the 1099, right? What is something that a person that has a 1099 versus a W2 benefit? Or what do they get? They get something called what? Deductions, right? So you always hear all the time, hey, how come the rich don't pay taxes? The rich need to pay more in taxes, whatever. And the reason why that's never actually going to work is because the tax laws are actually favorable to business owners and to people who get 1099 income, right? Miscellaneous income, right? And with the deductions, how it works is, let's just say that a person spends $70,000 in deductions, and they're left with $30,000 at the end of the tax year. Do y'all think that Uncle Sam is going to tax them on the 100,000, the 70,000 that they spent, or the 30,000 that they have left? They're going to tax them, exactly. They're going to tax them on the $30,000 because that is what they have left. So now, when you have a person that's making 1099 income, they're being taxed on the money that is left over at the end of the year, right? So that's a benefit, of course, of starting your own business and, of course, making self-employed income, right? Now, the last thing that I'm going to show before, of course, I give it back to the beautiful poodles is credit, right? Let's talk about credit really fast, right? Let's talk about what's a good credit score. Anybody want to tell me a good credit score? What's a good credit score?
800.
800? Okay. 800. All right.
Well,
800.
I think 720 and above is considered good.
Okay. So now my question to you guys is, how does one get above a 700 score, right? If we're looking at a credit card, right? You get a credit card that's $1,000, right? How much money do you need to spend if that's your only credit card? How much money do you need to spend in order to get a good credit score?
Less than 30% of
Less than 30%. Who is that?
Sasha.
On the money. On the money. Your credit usage needs to be under 30% in order for you to have a good or above a 700 credit score, right? Now, to have above an 800, how much do you think that usage needs to drop down to?
15.
15, 10. 10 actually, right? It needs to drop below 10, right? So yes, when it comes down to credit, it's not necessarily about, of course, people think that, people get confused of, oh, you have to pay your minimum balance, you have to pay your bills on time. Yes, you do have to do all of that. But they're also looking at how much money you're spending on your credit, right? Now, if you have more than one credit card and they have different obviously they have different credit limits. All of those limits, you would have to add all of those numbers together, and then your score would have to be under 30%, as we said before. And then if you want it above 800, it has to be under 10%. Is it better to pay it off each month? Yes. What my suggestion for having good credit, if you're really trying to build credit, I believe cash and king is king, but of course, sometimes you need the credit, right? If you're building credit, something that you want to do in order to avoid paying interest is do what? You want to be able to pay what? There's 3 dates that you need to be attentive of, right? You have your due date, right? You have your statement closing date,
And then your billing cycle.
right? Statement closing, right? And then you have, of course, the first day of your billing cycle, right? So now these are different dates, right? So when we're looking at these dates, the due date is just a date to say you have to pay this minimum or your credit is gonna get hit, right? But you're not only supposed to pay the minimum, just like the question was just asked, you're supposed to pay everything that is remaining on your statement, on your last statement. That is the number that is gonna accrue that interest. Whatever you left from your last statement. And then of course the first day of your credit of your statement is when you want to be able to pay off everything that you left from your previous statement so that you don't now pay any interest to the bank. All right? So, I mean, that pretty much wraps everything I, wanted to go over. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns about anything that I said? No? Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Tyree.
Absolutely. No problem.
So if there are other questions, and there will be some time at the end as well, if time permits, for additional questions. So thank you again, Tyree, for that information.
Absolutely. What was I good on time? Because
You are perfect. Thank you, Tyree. All right, so
all
now
right.
we're going to Ms. Sharon Hoskins, Esquire. Thank you. So I'm going to give the floor over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, President Adrian and President Dion, for having me join you tonight. And I'm looking forward to it. So I have a lot of information to share. They gave me 20 to 30 minutes. I'm going to talk fast and try to get it all in there. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Hold on. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you tonight about legacy planning, which estate planning. What most people think of is wills and trusts and death. It's really not just about death. It's about things that you can do while you're living as well to bring peace to your life and your family. So for tonight, I want to talk about the 4 don'ts, right? And I call it lyrical lessons on how to protect your legacy. So when you see the songs that I'm going to throw out, I want you to, sing them in your head, because I'm not going to sing them for you. And I tried to get the music clips, but it wasn't sounding right. So we'll just jump in. So first of all, Destiny's Child. No, 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 no. Okay, I want you, number 1, don't lose control. Don't give anything to anyone you love. Don't own anything. And don't put your kid's name on the deed to your house. Okay, those are your 4 don'ts. And let's go through what we mean. First of all, don't lose control. Janet Jackson said it. I want to be the one in control, right? Control of what I say, control of what I do, control. So what are the 6 essential components of an effective estate plan that allows you to be in and stay in control, right? So the first thing you think about is what is going on while you're still living, where you need to make sure that if you can't speak for yourself at the time, that someone is there to act for you. Someone that you choose, not someone chosen for you by a court. So the first thing you need is a power of attorney. And that power of attorney gives someone else that you select the authority to act for you in legal and financial matters. And that power of attorney is only good while you are living. Once you die, that person that you assigned no longer has any control over it. And the power of attorney can be for very specific purposes or specific timeframes if you needed it for that. A lot of times people may use it when they're buying a house just for their attorney to be at the closing and sign documents on their behalf. But what we use it for in our estate plans is really giving that more, we call it a durable power of attorney, more long-term, so that if you were to become incapacitated in some way, that you have someone who is there to step in and manage your affairs for you while you're living. The second thing is the healthcare proxy. You want to appoint someone who can make medical decisions for you if you are in the hospital, unconscious, or on life-sustaining equipment. And where healthcare proxy is the person you designate who is authorized to talk with your doctors and convey to them what your wishes are. They don't make the decision for you, they just convey what your decisions are. And the way you communicate what you want to them is through what we call a living will. And that's where you say, yes or no, I do want to be intubated, for instance. I want to be on a ventilator if I need it. I want CPR, dialysis. I want tube feeding. Or you may say, I don't want any of that. Give me a do not resuscitate order or do not intubate order. So how is your healthcare proxy person that you selected supposed to know these things if you don't let them know and have it laid out in your living will so that they are doing what you want them to do? And then with the living will, this is something we add with our plans. It's a personal care plan. And this is usually more for our older people who are possibly in a nursing home or receiving care at home. And this is really like an instruction manual for that person. It's all your preferences, right? If I want to sit and watch The Real Housewives of Atlanta on Sunday night, then make sure that I get to see that. If what I like to drink in the morning is for, tea, coffee, or whatever, make sure you give me the things that I like, not the stuff that I hate. Do you like to go outside? Do you like to go to movies? Do you like to go to the park, to the beach? All those things that you take for granted because, people don't know, but you get to take yourself or tell someone, take me there. But if you can't speak for yourself anymore, then you have to have something in place to let your caregiver know what it is that you want. So those are the first three. Then we talk about a living trust. And a living trust it's a trust. There are different types of trust. I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But there are revocable and irrevocable trusts. And those are used to tell your family members or whoever you assign as your trustee what you want to happen with your assets, similar in that way to a will. But with the trust, you actually can give more instruction, and there are some other benefits that come with it. So again, I'm going to come back to that. And then you have your last will and testament. That's what most people are familiar with. I hereby leave my, watch collection to so-and-so, that kind of thing. The will is good, but there are some limitations. And what people really don't know is that it can cost you quite a bit to probate a will, which is the process that is required for everyone to go through in order to implement a will. And then finally, a disposition of remains. A lot of people don't think about that. That is the document that tells the government, the state, who is to have control over your body after you pass on. Someone has to have control, and usually it's just the next of kin, but that might not be the person that you want. And I've seen situations where there was no disposition of remains document, and the way it happened, the person who died did not get what they wanted because of who ended up having control over their body. So it doesn't seem important, but it can become very important. And so next, number 2, never gonna get it, right? Don't ever give anything to anyone you love, right? Never give anything to anyone you love. Now you're like, what are you talking about? Isn't that the whole point, that we want to give our things to our loved ones, our family? Yes, but the key word that's highlighted is give, and why you don't want to give. There are predators out there, right? And your family is one of the main predators, I like to call them. So if you're married, right, and you have a spouse, after you die, what if that spouse remarries and now there's a new spouse, perhaps some other children, and now all the things that you worked so hard for goes to that new family, right? What about if your spouse has long-term care needs of their own? And so now all the assets that you've built up end up going to the government because you have to pay for, because you don't qualify for Medicaid, and you have to pay for a nursing home, or you have to pay for in-home care. That's another thing. What about children? What if you have that child who just is so bad with money, they spend it all the time, they're going into bankruptcy, maybe they have an addiction, whether it be drugs, alcohol, gambling, or even shopping. And, what about a disabled child or someone who becomes disabled? Things happen, maybe a car accident or something. I don't want to wish anything for anyone, but part of my job is to think of all the what ifs so that we can account for them. And then divorce. Everybody knows you get divorced, you're giving up half to that other person. And then financial aid. You are, particularly for grandparents, they want to leave something for a grandkid for college, or so they give money to the parent. And what happens? The parents get kicked off, the kid gets kicked off of financial aid because now the parents have money and they're now not going to be able to qualify for those need-based scholarships that the child might have been getting. So you want to be careful how you're leaving things to your family. And then when we talk about the government as a predator, we have here guardianship. What is that? Well, remember I mentioned that power of attorney? If you didn't have a power of attorney and something happens to you and there's no one authorized to speak for you, then your family has to get guardianship. That means they have to go to court, pay a lawyer, the court appoints another lawyer, and you're paying all this money for the court to tell you who is going to now speak for that person. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the one that filled out the petition. It can be anybody else. Think about Wendy Williams, right? Her banker filed a petition and became her guardian, not her family members. So you don't want something like that happening to you. Probate is the court process. I'm going to jump back into that in a second. Estate taxes. How many are worried about estate taxes? Well, I have good news and bad news for you. I'm willing to bet that most people on this call, you don't have to worry about estate taxes, right? Bad news is you don't have to worry about estate taxes, because what that means is that if you have assets of $7 million or more in New York State, then you'd be paying estate taxes. If you have assets of $13 million or more, you'll be paying federal estate taxes. So most people don't have to worry about this. But, it's not a bad problem to have, in my opinion. I wouldn't mind, getting those millions, and fine, I'll pay my taxes and figure out ways to minimize it. Then lawsuits happen all the time, right? People are always suing somebody, whether it's yours or one of your family members. It can impact what assets you have. And then finally, long-term care and Medicaid. It costs anywhere from, it costs about $500 a day if you need 24-hour care at home. If you have to go into a facility, it's about $15,000 per month. Most of us don't have that, but most probably wouldn't be able to qualify for Medicaid to have Medicaid pay for it. So there are steps that you need to take so that you can structure your assets in a way that will allow you to actually possibly qualify for Medicaid. And that's another thing that we do to work on. So these, you hear about them taking your home and having to give all your assets away and waiting 60 months or 5 years to qualify. Those things are not entirely true, but it can be true if you don't do pre-planning to avoid some of that. And there are ways around it. So let me see, how are we on time? Okay. Next. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if you could hear that. Have music.
There's no sound.
Oh, you
Just the
can't hear it. Okay. I'm hearing it, driving me crazy because I can't stop. Oh, here we go. So when we talk about the different components of what you need, right? That was black sheep. The choice is yours. You should remember that. This or that, this or that. Do you need a will or do you need a trust? What's the difference? So with the will, again, you're laying out what you want someone to do with your assets after you're gone. You're appointing person to be in charge of that. That's your executor. But what you're also getting is a trip to the courthouse for your family members. And they are going through the probate process. And that is a long process. It requires a lot of fees. Essentially, when you hire an attorney to work with you on that, it can cost you on the lower end, maybe about $5,000 for just partial representation. But truly, it's a percentage of the entire estate. So if you have a house, whether in Queens or Long Island, and you have some retirement assets or some savings, you could have an estate that's worth close to $1 million. And I'm just using $1 million because it's a nice round number. If you have to pay 3% in your attorney's fees for probate, that's $30,000 that you're spending. A lot of people think, oh, I got to get a will. And you're going to, they're thinking, oh, I'll pay somewhere between $500 to $1,200 for a will. But they're not realizing that on the back end, you're paying thousands of dollars to actually implement that will from the family. And then it's also public. Anybody can go on and look at all your assets that you have to list for the court and all the family members and who is supposed to get what. It takes a long time just to get the executor appointed. It takes now in New York courts anywhere from 6 months to a year. And then after the executor is appointed, they have to wait another 7 months before they can start giving out any of the assets. So you're well over a year at this point. And what's happening to maybe a house that was supposed to be transferred? Somebody has to pay those property taxes, or if there's a mortgage on it, somebody's got to pay the mortgage. And if you didn't get that life insurance policy that Mr. Hardy was talking about, you don't have the money to do it. And so houses are being lost to foreclosure because it's going through this process. So there are a lot of delays and expenses that are associated with probate, which is a reason why you want to try to avoid it. And so what do you do to avoid it? Trust. That's the sort of the answer to it all, right? Number 3, don't own anything. Take it out of your name, put it in a trust. Be like Whitney, say, I have nothing, right? So that's what we want to do. We have nothing. So when we talk about a trust, what is that? Now, if you have a will, you can leave things to your loved ones in a trust, but that doesn't get formed until after you die. That's a testamentary trust. That's fine. It has some limited benefits there because it only comes into effect after you die. But the other type of trust is a living trust. And living trusts, all trusts have 3 parties, a grantor, a trustee, and a beneficiary. The grantor is the one that creates it. The trustee is the one that manages it. And the beneficiary is the one that gets it, right? That's the best part. I want to be a beneficiary. And then if you have the 2 types are revocable, we call that an open box, and an irrevocable, we call that a closed box. So with the open box trust, what that means is that you can put assets into the trust, but you are also free to take them out at any time because that box is open. So you have maximum control and flexibility to do whatever you want. And what that trust will do is it will avoid probate, right? So you won't have to go to court. The second type of trust, the irrevocable, does a little more. It's closed. So when you put an asset in there, it is protected from, remember those predators I talked about? Lawsuits from the government and those things. So you put it in there because you know you want to protect that asset for your loved ones, whoever you want to give it to. And that little faucet thing on the side, the little drip, what that indicates is that you are actually able to take out the income. So if you have a house in there and you rent out, part of it is 2-family house or whatever, and you're renting out part of it. The rental income you receive doesn't have to stay in the trust. You can take out that income and use it for whatever purpose you want. But the asset itself does have to stay in there. So that is a type of trust that you use. A lot of business owners might use that because you want to separate your personal assets from your business assets so that if you're sued, you know that your personal assets will not be at risk. More often also is that's the one you use for Medicaid purposes. If you put your assets into that closed box trust and it's there for 5 years, then you have gone beyond that 5-year look back from Medicaid, and you can apply to Medicaid without that being seen as a resource that's going to help pay for it. So that's sort of the way that you strategize to make yourself Medicaid eligible by shielding the assets and getting them out of your name by putting them into a trust. And that's also the way a grandparent can give money to a child or grandchild in the trust so that it's not being reported on financial aid forms and therefore like sort of damaging their chances of getting need-based scholarships. Now the third one, that closed box with the IRS in it, that is the type of trust that is needed for those people in that estate tax range, right? The ones making more than 14 million or who have more than 14 million for federal taxes, or New York over 7 million. But with that one, you can't be a trustee or beneficiary, completely out of control. You have no management of that at all. So that's the one that the very wealthy tend to use when you think about the Rockefellers and that kind of thing. But the rest of us, we have the ability and assets, have enough assets to really make use of that middle one, the closed box irrevocable trust, to get the benefits from that. So make your kids some trust fund babies. Now, what the other part of doing an estate plan is creating the rules, right? You can design your trust and be as specific as you want to be and as creative as you want to be. You can have your own personal care plans in there. We're talking about asset protection in there. You can make your own rules. So for instance, we don't have time now, but I usually use a family of good times to show an example of it. But if someone was going to, if you were concerned that your spouse might get married after you died and marry someone who might want to take the assets and use them for themselves, you can put rules in there that say, well, if you get married, then you no longer have access to that trust, or you can no longer serve as a trustee, or you can't even appoint someone else to be a trustee, because you don't want that spouse appointing the new spouse and letting them control everything. Or let's say it's an older couple and you have some young thing, the young, one coming over there who's going to take advantage of this older man and end up taking all the assets that you had left and you intended to go to your children. So, there are rules that you can put in place to say, well, if you get remarried can mean remarriage or can mean cohabitation just for one night. You can create whatever the meaning is. Some people do incentives to say, well, if you go to college and you get a master's degree, then you get extra money or you get some other perk. So there are different things that you can do with the trust plans that you can't necessarily do otherwise. And it also protects from divorce. So if you have something in, you buy a house in your name and it's in the name of the trust, not your name. When you get divorced, that new soon to be ex-spouse will have no rights to that property because you don't technically own it. Okay, I think I'm getting close to time, so I'm gonna hurry up. So with some of the other personalized options, when you talk about a power of attorney, you may be thinking, well, can I just get the form that's online? Sure, you can, but the problem with that is very generic. And if you have a check, if you give somebody a blank check, what can they take? Everything in your bank account, right? Now, a power of attorney does so much more. So it's like a super blank check. You can take their house, their bank account, their car, everything, because they are acting as you. So you want to make sure that power of attorney has some instructions on there, gives you full authority, but has some guidelines so that that power of attorney agent can't get too cute and go off with all your stuff. You want to have specific instructions. With the healthcare proxy, you have they're almost like, we call them like a God proxy, because they're choosing whether you live or die in some respects, right? So you want to have specific instructions there. And some of the things we include too is that, hey, if you put me on life support, it's okay to leave me on there for X number of days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. But after that time, if I'm not going to get better, then, pull the plug. And the good thing about that, it helps resolve or prevent some of the fights between siblings, because one always thinks they know what mom or dad wants. But this way, you're just following mom or dad's instructions, and there's no need to be fighting over what they think. It's already written and it's there. Similar with the personal care plan, just knowing what it is that's going to make them most comfortable in those days. And then finally, we talk about having your rule book. You also have to make sure you don't just create that trust, but you integrate it, meaning you have to put the assets in the trust. You have to rename, retitle the assets and put them in the trust so that you can get those protections. Now, what about, you might say, why can't I just do a joint account or just do a beneficiary designation or payable on death, transfer on death in trust for? You can do those, and that's sort of a quick way to leave something to someone, but it doesn't give you a whole plan because you're not integrating all those other aspects that you want, where you can kind of do some more management and control, and you don't get that lifetime protection during your life where you're protecting your assets from those lawsuits and other creditors. And then finally, number 4, don't put your kid's name on the deed to your home. I hear this all the time, and it's a bad idea for many reasons. One, you put the kid's name on the deed to your home, it means they own it with you. And so if they are sued or get into any kind of trouble, you're putting that home is now at risk to their creditors. They can also sell that, their share of the home. It prevents you from doing some things with it because you may need their cooperation. And it may end up causing that kid to pay more taxes in the form of capital gains taxes. Because what happens is, if you put their name on it now, right, while you're living, and then say you die 10 years later, well, that's 10 years where they have owned that property, and the gain that may have accrued, any interest that has accrued on that property, appreciation that has gained on that property, is going to be attributed to you. Whereas if you hadn't put their name on it, when you died, they get it at the time of your death, and they get what's called a step up in basis. So rather than that 10 years worth of appreciation being assigned to them, it's whatever the value is at the time that you die. So if they go sell the property, there is no capital gain taxes to be paid because there's no gain, because your basis is the value at the time of death and at the time of selling, basically, if you're selling it, fairly close to death. Whereas if you had put it on there years ago, you're now going to pay capital gains taxes, and that's anywhere from 15 to 20% of the gain. So when if you don't have to pay taxes to Uncle Sam, then why do it? So that's a reason not to do it. And you also rather would just safeguard your home by putting it in that trust, getting Medicaid protection, creditor protection, you're minimizing your taxes, and you're still staying in control. And you can decide if you want to give someone a life estate to live there for a while or what have you. So that is it. So I hope you saw those are the 4 don'ts. Now be like Beyonce and get information and make sure you get your plan together. We do these workshops twice a month. We actually have another one coming up Thursday. So if you're interested in the full workshop, I'll put in the chat the links to that. If you if you attend a workshop, then you can get a complimentary vision meeting where we sit with you one-on-one to talk about your specific situation and help you decide what plan is right for you. All our plans are packages, so that's a full comprehensive plan. So you have the QR codes there for that. If you would also please for me complete the evaluation. And if you would like to receive our newsletter, you can put your email in the chat and I'll take that. Or actually, I think I can put or you can fill out the evaluation, actually. If you fill out the evaluation, I'll have your email. I can send it to you there. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sorry I had to go through so quickly, but I hope you got some information that is useful to you.
Are there any questions? You can put in the chat or you can unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Mia, and I wanted to ask a question to Ms. Hopkins.
Mhm.
I work for the Department of Education, and they provide us with vouchers for a meeting like you discussed. Are you one of the resources that buys into that program, or are you not one of the resources that we would be able to use with a voucher?
No, I'm not a part of that program. I'm not familiar with it, but I do know that with a lot of those, different unions will provide those kinds of things. And what they really provide for you is a very simple will, and that's pretty much it. It's not a full comprehensive plan that looks at everything, that that you need and that would cover you fully. So, if certainly look into it, because it's better to have something than nothing. But that's, just you want to be careful and make sure you ask a lot of questions when you go to do that, because they tend to be very cookie cutter and very simple.
Thank you. You were very
Mhm.
informative. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm putting in the chat actually a link to some of the handouts that we have, so you can have the information a little bit more in depth if you'd like to read that. And then I am including links to the upcoming workshops and the QR codes that are there. Any other questions?
Okay, so hearing none, I'm gonna first say thank you to both Ms. Sharon Hoskins Esquire, Mr. Tyree Hardy. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
Deep gratitude just for just the insight, taking your time and dedication to really empowering our community through knowledge, especially through financial literacy. I want to say a special thank you to the Beta Psi Sigma alumni chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated and the National Association of University Women, Flushing North Shore, whose support has made this program possible today. And thank you all for joining us this evening. I really hope that you got knowledge, you were able to get some questions answered, and really begin maybe your own personal journey and your own understanding of financial literacy through your own lens. And together we're building a more stronger, more financially informed community. Before you go, I just ask that you please take a moment to complete our survey. Your feedback is really helpful to help us as well as be planning. And as mentioned before, our continued partnership, not only through this topic, but just kind of looking at broader lens. So with that being said, thank you all. Madam President, Madam Bassett, do you have any words that you'd like to say before we wrap up?
I would just like to thank the two presenters. I'm sorry, Adrian.
No,
Did
go
I
ahead,
cut you off?
please.
Okay. I just want to thank our two presenters. I think this was a lot of information in a short period of time. You both did an amazing job disseminating the information to us. I would definitely take a look at those handouts that were put in the chat. They will be very helpful. I was trying to take notes, and it's hard to write everything down when you're, speaking so fast, but this was an amazing program. Definitely something I think we should continue. Part 2 should be on the horizon.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I do also want to just echo your sentiments and say thank you to our presenters today. It's really important for us to have these conversations amongst ourselves, but then also bring it back to our youth and our peers, our friends, our families. I'm gonna leave this and go do a check-in with my parents and just make sure that they have their estate plans and all those things in order. So thank you again for joining us. I do want to invite everyone. We do have a prayer call. That is our next event will be our April prayer call, which is on the 30th at 7:22 p.m. You can find more information at Long Island_SG Row on Instagram, and just look out for our next event. And thank you again for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.